Hi everyone, welcome to our online hangout space, hashtag Chat Up, Real Talk, Real Impact, brought to you by Quarantalk Media and supported by the United States Embassy in the Philippines. I am Jermaine Halandoni Derrunya, and as usual, here on Chat Up, we bring you conversations on social issues and various advocacies. Join our chat, keep your messages and questions coming, and share this live stream using our official hashtags hashtag chat up, and hashtag real talk, real impact. Let's now dive into today's discussion and find out what's up. Today is a special day, especially for environmental activists. Earth Day is celebrated every year on April 22nd to raise awareness on pressing issues in the environment and the much needed actions and changes to protect the environment. With the worsening climate crisis, Earth Day 2022 is a call to act boldly, innovate broadly, and implement equitably, holding everyone, businesses, governments, and citizens accountable and accounted for. This episode of hashtag Chat Up, Real Talk, Real Impact will gather speakers from civil society to explore current challenges and opportunities on climate action in the Philippines. And with the 2022 national and local elections just around the corner, our discussions will also explore an environmental agenda for the next leaders of the country. So tune in and keep your comments and questions coming to join our conversations. Let us now call in our fellow environment advocates joining our conversation. Our first guest is an environmental activist, trainer, campaigner, policy lobbyist, and a prominent figure in the environmental movement in the Philippines. Her over a decade of experience in the environment and community participation sector honed her expertise on providing inputs on a wide range of chemical safety and waste issues, banking on evidence-based approaches towards sustainable solutions. She is currently the coordinator of the EcoWaste Coalition, an environmental non-government organization working towards zero waste and toxic-free society. With her leadership, EcoWaste Coalition was able to spearhead community action and move for the adoption of several solid waste management related laws and local ordinances, build and successfully initiate zero waste models among schools, public spaces, dioceses, and other communities. Let's all welcome Aileen Lucero.
Hi, good evening,
Hi,
and
good
happy Earth
evening, Miss
Day.
Aileen. Happy Earth Day, Miss Aileen. And next, we have someone working in the environmental NGO for more than 15 years, focusing on campaigning and communications. She has worked regionally for Greenpeace Southeast Asia, International Union of Conservation of Nature, and Gaia, or Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives on Climate and Biodiversity Issues. She is currently the country director for Greenpeace Philippines. Greenpeace is a global network of independent national and regional organizations with presence in over 55 countries. Greenpeace uses nonviolent creative action to pave the way towards a greener, more just, and peaceful world and to confront the systems that threaten our environment. Joining us is Lea Guerrero.
Hello, thanks. Happy to be here and happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day, Miss Lea. Thank you so much for being here. Our next guest is a communications practitioner and has devoted much of his personal and professional life advocating for environmental journalism and working in the fields of youth development and peace building. He had previously served as the advocacy and communications officer of a UNICEF-funded project for out-of-school youth in Zamboanga City and the media content producer of a peace-building NGO based in Mindanao working on social behavioral change communications. Currently, he serves as the executive director of the Association of Young Environmental Journalists, an environmental nonprofit and media organization focused on implementing capacity building projects, knowledge product development, and media content production. He is also an alumnus of the Y. Seeley Academic Fellowship for Spring 2017. Let's all welcome Val Vestil. Hi, Val.
Hello, magandang gabi po sa lahat. Thank you, Jermaine. Hi, Miss Lea, Miss Aileen. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Thank you so much for joining us. Val, Miss Leia, and Miss Aileen, thank you so much for being here. And again, happy Earth Day, not just to our guests, but to everyone watching. Happy Earth Day. All right. So let's dive into today's conversation. So let's start by setting the context of our conversation. All of you here have been in the work of environmental advocacy for so many years now. I would like to ask, how would you describe the movement now and the public's awareness and understanding of the climate crisis and yung responses of governments meaning internationally and locally here in the Philippines? I'll start with Miss Leia.
Thanks, Jermaine. Yeah, big question kasi ang daming mga sectors na kasama. Pero I'll start with the public. I guess compared to before, like 2007, when the issue of climate change was just starting to be mainstreamed, right now we see the movement that we see is quite big, and it's also very knowledgeable on climate change. Just last Sunday, I was at the Quezon Memorial Circle where we had an activity for our elections advocacy campaign. And almost everyone that I approached there had an understanding of the climate crisis. And for us Filipinos, that's it's pretty close to the gut because the understanding about climate crisis is extreme weather events. And I think that the frequency where we've been experiencing these kinds of weather events in the past decade has contributed largely to that awareness. In terms of government responses, I would say that a lot of governments right now do a lot of lip service to about the climate crisis. They are talking about, what they're doing to solve it, but in the unfortunate thing that when it comes to action, real money on the table, for example, in the climate talks, or more ambitious actions to mitigate emissions, the action it's not really there. So there is response in terms of lip service, but we need to get more response in terms of genuine action.
All right, thanks, Miss Leia. We need concrete actions and not just lip service. All right. How about Miss Aileen?
Yes, actually, I echo Leia's views. For the public, it is much more aware right now with regards to the crisis. In addition to that, there are also groups who are turning into vegetarians or vegans just to have contribution on avoiding meat,
Right.
that would contribute also to the climate crisis. But then the public and the actions from the public, may it be on the simple steps, are a great contributory, no? But then what we really need is government actions. And
Right.
just
Right.
like Leia's mentioned, that it is also lip service. Actually, on the government's response, it is mostly what they're saying and what their plans is in opposite to what they are doing. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
they have plans to reduce carbon emissions, but then they have they have put regressive policies under the Philippine Development Plan. So it is it it uh, it clashes with the
Right.
intention of being sincere and of having a business as usual scenario for all of them.
Mhm.
So that adds up. Um,
Right.
and in order to really solve this climate crisis, it is not only the public or the vulnerable communities that should be on the front line. Government response and government actions should be the very important one, to be in on the front line, and that would sway everything on its place.
Thanks, Miss Eileen. So it's really important that it should be a collective action. Yes, it's well and good that the individuals are acting towards climate justice, lessening our consumption of meat, lessening plastic consumption. But yet, if the government and other big institutions are not doing anything about it, then what good could that be, right? I mean, we really need beyond the lip service, we need concrete actions. How about Val? Parang may gusto ko na sabihin, Val. Go ahead.
Yeah, I obviously do not have as much experience as Ma'am Lea and Miss Aileen, 15 plus years. I'm fairly new to the field, maybe around 2016, 2017. And then the question, something about public awareness, and the organization that I founded, the startup media nonprofit that I founded, was actually born out of the fact that there was not a lot of media coverage back in
Right.
2016, 2017 on environmental stories. Now, this was before Greta Thunberg and the strike,
Mm.
the climate strike. So at least in my part of the Philippines, which is Dumaguete at that time, hindi masyadong pinag-uusapan sa pahayagan ang balitang pangkalikasan. It's all about
Right.
drugs, crimes, politics, business, and lifestyle. And, as a mass comm major, we were taught na there's a agenda setting theory of the media on public's awareness. Kung ano ang pinag-uusapan sa media, yan lang din ang pinag-uusapan sa ating mga bahay. And there was an obvious neglect on environmental issues and initiatives. So from 2017, 2016, before the climate, the movement that was started by Greta, and I'm sure more NGOs have been doing work even before Greta came into the picture. But they keep on saying Greta because from that time, after Greta was introduced and her movement exploded worldwide, especially among young people, the public's awareness, we don't have research to back this up, but I feel from a media perspective na there has been talk from the youth sector on climate change and environmental sustainability. We have a long way to go, definitely. Pero from 2016, from where I stood in 2016 up until 2022 to today, I really noticed some changes. And the changes may be slow, the changes may have been belated, but in terms of public awareness from my perspective, talagang may movement on increasing public's awareness. Understanding of climate crisis, yan yung pag-usapan pa natin.
Mm-mm. Medyo may mga technicalities involved, but at least the awareness is there, no? At least there's a change naman that people are talking about this and getting more concerned about what's happening in our environment and our planet as of the moment. All right. So we mentioned earlier during the intro that Earth Day 2022 invites businesses, governments, and all stakeholders to act boldly, innovate broadly, and implement equitably in partnership for the planet. So, what kinds of partnerships or collaborations do you think could bring forth such innovations and equitable or inclusive solutions that would protect the environment? I'll start with Miss Lea.
Thanks. Yeah. In terms of partnerships, I think, any partnership can work as long as the principle that keeps it together is sound. From our side, the principle that has to be there when you're talking about solutions for the climate crisis, it's really systemic changes. So, for example, what the world needs right now, and this is what the two IPCC reports that came out earlier this year has been saying, is that, and this is also the message from the climate talks last year in Glasgow, is that we need to phase out fossil fuels. That is a very big systemic change. And unless, partnerships or government policies or business practices are aligned towards that goal, if they're not aligned towards that goal, any sort of partnership is not really going to do more than scratch the surface, right? So what we need is the understanding among all these sectors, especially the business sector, corporations, particularly fossil fuel corporations, right? That there needs to be a change in the business that we're doing. Governments really understanding that they need to be phasing out fossil fuel energy sources very quickly. unless that is the core of what the partnership would be like, right? Of what the investments of their time, of their money would be like, then any solution would not address the root, and will be left with our usual band-aid solutions that don't really solve the problem where it needs to be addressed.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lea. Val, anything to add to that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I remember when you mentioned partnerships and collaborations, when I attended the COP back in Glasgow, Scotland, it's just mga goals, four goals of COP26, and it was emission reduction target, adaptation and mitigation, climate finance, and ikaapat na goal sa COP26. This year's COP26 was working together to adapt, and I think it was emphasized in COP26 na paulit-ulit yung fourth na goal na yan, partnerships, partnerships. What did partnerships look like? Partnerships look like partnering the private sector, partnering with the government, partnering with civil society organizations and NGOs. And yet, COP26 wasn't perfect. It built upon way too many promises still from, it was supposed to be an update to the promises made in the Paris Agreement. 5 years later, we have COP26, and it's promises upon promises. And I felt like we keep on talking about partnerships. It's a big goal in the climate movement, partnering with the government. But I feel like most of the discussions, at least especially in COP26, especially for policy change, we're just government side, government side. In fact, personally speaking, our own government, the Secretary of Finance, Mr. Carlo Dominguez, was not able to meet the NGO representatives who were present in COP26. And I was part of that delegation. And if we talk about partnerships, paano ba natin ma-achieve yung partnership na hindi nga natin kinakausap yung mga Pilipino, yung mga Philippine organizations present at COP26? The government refuses to meet the CSOs, at least from the perspective of the finance secretary. Mm-hmm. So it's all big words. It's all big, heavy partnership, pero hindi nagagawa. Again, it's all talk. And you're asking what kind of partnership or collaboration do you think would bring forth innovation? A partnership that listens, not only inside their government sphere, but going out to CSOs, going out to the private sector, going out to the grassroots community. Napaka-high level ang operation ngayon ng government in terms of climate finance, in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation, when I have seen with my own eyes the lack of consultation with existing CSOs and NGOs working for climate adaptation and finance. So that's definitely something that not only we need to talk about, needs to be something that needs to be acted on, because everything is so belated already. It's not too late, but we need the government, the duty bearers have a big slice of the cake in terms of climate action.
Thanks, Val. Ang daming dapat i-unpack doon sa sinabi mo, no, na nakakatuwa na, yes, we need partnerships. Yes, we talk about partnerships, very high level, and yet, ano na yung nagagawang actions? And we don't even go to the grassroots, no? Hindi din nila alam. Like what you mentioned earlier, yes, there are changes in terms of being aware on the climate issue natin, pero hindi pa lahat may kaalaman doon. How about Ms. Aileen? Anything to add po?
When you say partnership, no, first and foremost, the private sector or the businesses must first reflect ano yung kaya niya. What can he or she contribute to the environment, no? So that's the first question that he needs to answer and to reflect on. And then for the government, sino ba yung kapartner? No?
Yes.
When you talk about partnership, it is the people, no, not just the private sector, because in our case we've seen government agencies consulting only private sectors, industry representatives where in fact they should be consulting the people, the civil society as well, so that they could establish the balance between all the sectors and all the players um that are needed to do actions with regards to the
Mm-mm.
climate crisis. So number one key is really consultation, and then for the vulnerables, hindi kasi siya, we cannot call partnership na lumalabas lang tuwing merong kalamidad, no? When there's a heavy typhoon ay makikita sila doon. No, so that's
Mm-mm.
not what partnership means, no? If we want to really have an inclusive solutions and a sustainable one, um they have to reach out for to all the peoples, may it be in the community, on the vulnerable sectors, may it be on the fishermen's, or everybody, they should consult it. And the businesses should also make sacrifices. Not all only not the usual business. And when you think of business, their main goal is to reap profit. So they should realize and they should reflect on how to reap, to have profit, but that at the same time contribute to the reduction of carbon emissions. So actually that's the hardest question for them because they're only after the profit, because that's businesses.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. All right.
If
Thank
I
you.
may,
Yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Miss Leah. Go ahead. Go ahead po.
yeah, conversation naman to, di ba?
Opo, go
I
ahead.
was just thinking, yeah, kasi when we say partnerships is part of the solution, parang I would qualify that, and it does need to be qualified because partnership is such a broad term. I mean, what
Right.
is the context of the partnership? That context needs to be established. So, for example, in the climate talks, what governments and businesses want to partner on are carbon offsetting schemes, right? And these are not real solutions. Carbon offsetting schemes are they're kind of, they're greenwash. They're
Right.
worse than greenwash. It's,
Greenwashing.
yeah, it's really bad. It's like paying some other entity to take care of your emissions, right? Yung parang I'll pay you para kunwari
Mm-hmm.
I mitigated, 'di ba?
Yes.
So it's really bull, if you want to put it that way, right? So parang if we're forming partnerships on that principle, that is really unacceptable for
Mm-mm.
communities, unacceptable for the countries that are really experiencing the onslaught of the climate crisis. That's
Mm-mm.
not the kind of partnership we need. It
Right.
has to be a partnership na built on really the science, what science is saying, that it needs to be reduction, right? And a massive reduction of emissions. It needs to be putting money on the table for vulnerable communities. That's
Mm-mm.
the sort of partnership that we need to be talking about. So parang, just to put it very broadly, yeah, for the Earth Day celebrations, they did say that that was part of the theme. That's, di ba yung theme nila ngayon, invest in nature. It's about partnership. Pero even that needs to be qualified. What sort of investments, right? What sort of
Right. Right.
partnerships? Because that's the key.
Yes. Miss Leah, can you expound further po, elucidate further for our viewers? What do you mean by carbon offsetting?
Yeah. So yung pinakasimple na explanation for carbon offsetting. So for example, I'm a fossil fuel company. This is what they do. Sorry, to begin the explanation. For companies, right, and countries are kind of they have a responsibility to reduce their carbon emissions, because they are some of the most responsible entities. They are the most
Mm-mm.
responsible entities for the climate crisis that we're experiencing right now. And essentially, what that means is they need to change their business practices. and industrialized countries need to slow down their growth, right? That is how that's it plainly. So for companies, for example, like Shell, Exxon, etc., it means that they have to change their business. Fossil fuel companies do not have a place anymore in a world where climate change is really killing people. So what they're doing, the carbon offsetting program is really it's a scheme where I, for example, a rich company that has a very, very big carbon footprint, I can pay another company to plant trees for me.
Mm,
And still, I could still do what I'm doing. I could still extract oil. I could still extract fossil gas in a much bigger scale than I used to do. I don't need to stop my business model, which is destroying the world, because it's offsetting, right? Or my carbon emissions are actually smaller because I'm paying this company somewhere in the Philippines to plant trees for me. That's
right.
what carbon offsetting it is, and it's a really big joke. So if that's a sort of partnership that we're going to see, that's really not what the world needs. We need like uh, a genuine push from these companies to really change the way that they're doing their business.
All right. Thanks, Miss Leia. That was clearly explained at one point. I hope na naintindihan lalo ng ating mga manonood yung ibig sabihin ng carbon offsetting. Kaya pala si Val talaga kanina, galit ng greenwashing, greenwashing, because it is greenwashing, no?
Because
Oo. So,
essentially it doesn't, to add no Jermaine,
exactly, yeah.
essentially it doesn't
Yes,
stop a company from
right.
emitting more carbon.
Yes,
It just
yes,
covers up the amount of carbon that they are emitting.
right.
But the issue is not how much trees are you planting. The issue is how much carbon are you emitting.
Yeah. Right.
So that's
It's not
something
even
that
a band-aid solution. Eh. It's not really a not even a band-aid solution. It's not really a solution at all, no? So I hope people were able to understand what carbon offsetting is. And if you have time no, after this show, go ahead and research and get to know more of these organizations who are here and be part of these organizations. So let's go back po sa ating conversation. So we mentioned a lot about fossil fuels and plastic. We'd like to ask lang po, no, how much do plastics and fossil fuel companies contribute to the climate crisis? We've heard a lot about of these things, but can you clarify further? I'll start with Miss Aileen.
Okay. So, with regards to the fossil fuel at saka yung plastic, no? So, I guess in 2019, there's a Shell report that says that the estimated production of plastic already add up to 850 million metric tons of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, mainly because plastic are made up of petroleum, no? And then the number one contributor to the climate crisis are fossil fuels, oil and drilling as
Mm-mm.
well, and waste. And all of this, if the plastic production, it began from the fossil fuel, the oil and drilling, and then on its whole life cycle, it ends up in the disposal, which is the waste. So
Right,
definitely,
right.
there are greenhouse gases being released in every step of the cycle, and not to mention if these plastics are to be used or to be burned as feedstock, in cement kilns, or being as Leah mentioned, carbon offsetting, which is mostly, all of the greenwashes are being done nowadays here in the Philippines, for plastic. So the plastic industry are just producing and producing single use plastics and plastics as well, um, that adds up to the
Mm-mm.
carbon emissions, in the atmosphere, no? But then, the businesses doesn't even care, um, where does all of these plastics they produce ends up, no?
Exactly.
But in the real sense, these greenhouse gases as are already causing global warming for every one of us. while the businesses are reaping from from profit, and just drilling and producing more, we are all suffering. So
Thanks, Miss Aileen. Miss Leia?
Yeah, it's actually been quantified. Yeah, I hear what Eileen is saying, um, and that the contribution of fossil fuel companies to the climate crisis has actually been computed and quantified. In 2013, a scientist named Richard Heady released a study where his team of scientists computed what share 90 of the biggest fossil fuel companies in the world, including 50 investor owned fossil fuel companies, what share they had in the total emissions of anthropogenic human activity caused climate change from the Industrial Revolution in 1751 until 2013. And in their calculations, which was corroborated, it's peer reviewed by other scientists and so on, and it's the definitive source for the quantification of contributions to climate crisis. In their computation, it's 65% of the emissions, the historical carbon emissions that has been spewed out into the planet since 1751 until 2013 is from fossil fuel companies. That is a really, really, really big share. And we do know that one of the biggest drivers of the climate crisis is the burning of fossil fuels. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, diba? Right now, yung Val mentioned earlier, the global climate talks, it's mostly talking about responsibilities of industrialized countries and so on. But if you look at that perspective from the study, you get that sense that it's also private sector has a really, really big role to play, and we do need to hold them accountable in the same way that we're holding countries accountable for their share of the responsibility.
Thanks, Miss Leia and Miss Eileen. All right, so let's move forward. Now, we talked about plastic pollution as well as fossil fuels and how it affects to the contribute to the climate crisis. I would like to ask, what campaigns for the environment do you think seem to work or have worked before? No, can you offer some pointers for advocates who are tuned in tonight who would like to do more for the environment? I'll start with Val.
Yeah, with our capacity building and training for young journalists, we do an analysis of what kinds of environmental stories are being pushed out there by local media. And nakita namin na puro bad news. It's all disaster, it's all death, it's all crisis. And we talk with our trainees and we ask them what they feel about these kinds of stories, and we actually read more about it. There's what we call eco anxiety. I'm sure you've heard of this. It's when you feel helpless and anxious
Right.
of the impending crisis, and you feel like no amount of effort that you will do will actually offset the kind of crisis that we are all stuck in. And it gives a sense of hopelessness sa mga kabataan, for young people. I speak for young people, not all, some that I've engaged with and I've read up on. It gives a sense of hopelessness, and parang it freezes anyone from doing something about the environment. Kasi napakalaki ng fossil fuel company, napakalaki ng deforestation, napakalaki ng climate change. Itong mga konseptong ito, napakalaki, parang hindi ko kaya. Like, what will my non-using of a plastic straw
Right.
do to positively impact and change these big, huge giants that we're up against? Climate change, fossil fuel companies. So in terms of advocating and campaigning for the environment, something valuable that we saw in our work is to offer alternatives, is to offer a solution. And we label and call it solutions journalism or hope-based communication. Uh, just because we're talking about hope, just because we're talking about solutions, does not mean we forget about the level of urgency that we need to
Right.
put into climate action. Okay, people think kasi it's toxic positivity. Bakit super positive? Eh, we're all dying. La la la. The world is burning. La la la. Well, in my work, I realized that people may have an aversion to things that they feel they will have no control over. But if you offer them a solution, if you show them proof of concept, models of environmental campaigns that work, policies, environmental policies that work, institutions, private sector, organizations doing good work, they will feel a sense of hope. And then that's where the engagement comes in.
Right.
Na parang sinasabi natin, may ginagawa itong si Greenpeace, may ginagawa itong si EcoWaste, may ginagawa itong coalition na ito. And here's how you can help. Here's how you can join. So much of our campaign right now and our efforts in this movement are practicing hope-based communications and solutions journalism because at the end of the day, it inspires courageous action. It does not necessarily stray away from the urgency that we need in terms of climate action, but it offers a solution that people can follow, especially among young people.
Ang ganda pakinggan na Val, hope-based communication, everything that is anchored on hope, no? So you do something about it because you know there's a solution to this global climate crisis and wag natin kalimutan, there's still the sense of urgency. Miss Aileen, anything to add to that po? Yung mga campaigns niyo po that
Yes,
work,
no?
yes po,
Oo.
go ahead po.
Actually, for when we're talking of campaigns, no, it is really good. It is really good to present models, just as Val mentioned. So models, talaga nakakapag-initiate siya, no, nakakapag-push pa siya forward for other um individuals to follow, no, and then making them realize also that they're doing something from the environment, no, even small steps like conserving energy, conserving electricity, going on a bike, um conserving water, it all adds up in
Mm-mm.
mitigating and reduction, no. So these simple steps, maganda siya na i-highlight, no, na they are doing it already. And while we are highlighting it, since marami yung youth of ngayon, ay maganda rin na they should speak up, no. They should demand climate justice. That is one of the good campaigns that we could see on the environment, using the social media to voice out your concerns with regards to the environment. Actually, even the upcoming election is a really good avenue, no. It's a good medium for our youth or our advocates to really ask their national and local candidates to
Mm-mm.
prioritize the climate emergency and prioritize the environment, because in every elections, environment is always on the end tail of all
Opo.
agendas. So one of the program really that would include them and would um, uh, take their initiative is by speaking up. Magaling ang mga bata dyan eh. The advocates and the youth are really good in voicing out their concerns on social media. So that
Mm-mm.
really helps. And I think that is one aspect that they could be successful dun mismo sa kanilang mga ginagawa.
Thank you po, Miss Aileen. Miss Lea?
Yeah, I love what Val said earlier, and what Eileen said about the youth, and the political work that's happening right now, in terms of trying to influence the candidates during election time. Yeah, I'll go a little bit more radical. Pero just to start with the youth, parang I see that yung movement building happening with youth today.
Mm-mm.
It's something unprecedented. We've not seen that back in 2007 nung the start na mainstream yung climate change as a topic in the public sphere of awareness, right? What we're seeing right now with youth getting together, mobilizing, is both unprecedented and inspiring. It's, I think, one of the biggest campaigns on climate that is really working to mobilize people. And it's, spilled over from youth to their parents, and so on. So I think yung notion, and there are a lot of organizations that work on this. Greenpeace is one of them. The notion of building solidarity, building that togetherness in a movement, is one of, for me, one of the biggest formulas to address, for people to be part of addressing the climate crisis in a big way, in a way that really makes a really a large difference, more than, for example, lifestyle changes, because the scale of the problem is so big, and it's really pushing government and businesses into action, into doing the right thing. And the movements are making that happen. It's doing small steps, pero the Fridays for Future movement, and the other youth movements that we're seeing around the world are really at the front, not just in speaking to policymakers and businesses, but also in inspiring their fellow youth. And that speaks back to what Val said earlier about hope communications. It's really people being inspired to really map out the future that they deserve, and they don't deserve a future with a lot of climate impacts. Yeah, so I'll stop there because they did discuss that, and I just find it really wonderful what this movement building that is happening, and the scale is unprecedented, and if it continues to build up, we will see a lot of hope. The climate movement of NGOs and so on, they see a lot of hope and inspiration in what the youth are doing right now.
Thank you, Miss Leia. So ngayon po, let's talk about yung specific areas of your work, no? And then feel free po to comment or to engage with our other speakers if you feel intersectionality doon sa work that you do, no? Miss Aileen, your organization po works to promote zero waste and toxics-free environment, no? So how do you explain the concept of zero waste, and ano po yung mga factors that contribute to the toxicity of the environment? And what actions can be done po to achieve zero waste? Alam ko ang hirap nito, no? And preventing human-caused toxicity in the environment.
Yes, for EcoWaste Coalition, when we say zero waste, it is totally no waste, no? And not on the philosophical way, but then no waste because everything is being recycled, and
Yes.
there's no waste of resources. So that is zero waste, no? Not just in principle, but also in the plan of action. And how do we start that? Zero waste works on two aspects, not just on the waste cycle, because currently we have the linear waste approach, no?
Mm-mm.
So we're just at the end of it, it's just disposal. But then
Right.
what zero waste wants to convey is the resourcefulness, yung umiikot siya, no? So and in order to do that, it should start with the design of the product itself, and that
Right.
where toxicity can be prevented, no? If we have made a product toxic, then definitely it would release also toxicity. So
Yes.
there that's where we put in the toxic in toxic out principles, because whatever you put in there, when you burn it or when you put it somewhere else, definitely the toxic will comes out. And the hardest thing is that you cannot really recycle. It's for
Mm.
example, this plastic packaging, it's not part of the zero waste. It goes against the zero waste because um from the start, it was created from petroleum, and there's lots of toxicity in there already. um they cannot be recycled at all. They are not biodegradable. So they would eventually end up in the landfill or in the dump site or in the oceans. So wala na siya
Mm-mm.
ibang pupuntahan kasi hindi naman siya
Right.
mababiodegradate, no? It will
Opo.
just ends up somewhere. So that is not what we want, no? So what we
Mm-mm.
want is really from the design, it should be malinis na. And then the way you do the production, the raw materials, the extraction, and everything is also in a manner of conservation and protecting the environment. So that is zero waste for us. And sabi nga, it's really hard. But then it would be hard for the private sector, for the businesses who are doing all these products, who are producing all these
Mm-mm.
products, because the
Mm-mm.
consumers are only there to purchase, and they depend on the what these businesses and corporations are giving them.
Mm-mm.
So there must be a paradigm shift and the sustainable um, um, reflections from the business sector or the
Right.
industry.
Opo. Miss Aileen, would circular economy initiatives help to that, to achieving zero waste? Like for
Yes,
example,
yes,
yes, opo.
yes. But then um, we really have to quantify this also, no?
Mm-mm.
Kasi there are some organizations and some government agencies that thinks circularity on a on a not so good definition, no? For
Opo.
them, for example, for them, if you have the plastic and then you put it as a feedstock to a
Yun na
cement
yun.
kiln or a
Opo.
incineration, then you're doing circularity. But then because it produces energy according to them, but
Right.
that is wrong. They're
Mm-mm.
just creating a wrong narratives. So because if they put it inside the cement kiln as a feedstock, definitely it will all the toxic in their packaging will be released in the atmosphere.
Mm.
Yeah, hindi nila alam yun kasi
Yes.
it's air. No one can see the air, but then there is already harm to the environment.
Opo. And share ko lang po sa ating tower panel. I was speaking with a lot of MRF or junk shop owners, and apparently yung plastic, may test din sila kung pwede siyang i-recycle. Kapag sinunog nila, tas sticky siya, hindi siya plastic. Kapag lumubog siya, hindi siya plastic. So, hindi siya ma-recycle or ma-upcycle at all. So, itatapo na lang siya. So, that adds pa, yun po. Miss Aileen?
Yes, actually, there are lots of false solutions, no? Um, um, there are also businesses and private sectors who are using zero waste term, that they
Mm-mm.
are into zero waste and they're promoting zero waste, pero pag tinignan mo, iba pala yung definition nila ng zero waste, and they're only promoting false solutions, not the real
Opo.
solutions at all. There are lots, but eventually they are all band-aid solutions and a stopgap solutions as well. That for example, all those sachets, you upcycle it into something, but then but in due time, it will still end up and add up to the waste
Opo.
pile. So
Opo.
it is
Alam mo,
not.
Go
Miss
ahead, Val.
Yes.
Go
Aileen,
ahead.
we were it's funny to think about these false solutions from the private sector, but we were doing information needs analysis with Forest Foundation on how businesses can move towards becoming more sustainable. And isa sa mga lumitaw na problema at gap at challenge nila is they don't know the experts that they can enjoin, and they don't know where to find these experts, these
Mm.
sustainability experts. There is an interest for some of these private sector individuals for their company to follow a more sustainable business model. It's just that they don't know where to look for this one person who knows the difference. Yun, sabi ni Ms. Aileen, the difference between a false solution and a real solution. What
Right.
real zero waste is in a business. So it's actually a gap and a challenge on that is interested to be noted about the business sector in their transition to sustainability. So again,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, true. Baka may mga false solutions talaga. Hindi alam yung totoong konsepto ng zero waste. Pero sa side naman ni business sector, ni private sector, parang, yeah, true. Pero saan kami makakuha ng resources at ng mga expertise who knows what to do? And how much are they? How much do we need to invest in this sector in this component of the business model? So baka kailangan din i-focus on access from the private sector to these zero waste experts.
All right.
Yan. Actually, if we're going to start on the whole cycle, dapat I think dapat before they find solution to the waste they produce, they should redesign their product first. At the
Yes.
end of the pipe, there wouldn't be any problematic products at all. So it is much cheaper if they redesign, and more sustainable for them, rather than finding solutions at the end of the pipeline. Because it is really intensive, and you're just putting um, uh, something na panakip doon sa gap, no? So ganun yung ano niya.
All right. Thank you, Miss Aileen. Punta naman tayo kay Miss Lea. Miss Lea, you work for Greenpeace po, no? And you work on various areas of environmental and social justice. What does climate justice mean? And how do we make the connection between protecting the environment and promoting people's well-being and human rights?
Yeah, I was following the conversation earlier kasi it's pretty interesting, and I'll use that as a jump off point for talking about climate justice, but I won't start with climate justice kasi yung sinabi ni Aileen kanina, when you one way, the way that Greenpeace looks at environmental issues is from a justice lens, and that's also, I think that also goes for EcoWaste Coalition. If you look at yung inexplain ni Aileen kanina na problema with corporations having false solutions and so on, it's all environmental problems are really justice issues at heart, right? So, for example, yung kwento ng waste, diba? Yung waste na single-use plastic, for example, when it's produced, right? Nag-extract siya, nakakasira siya ng buhay at kabuhayan ng mga ibang tao, right? Tapos kapag naging basura siya, nasaan yung mga dump sites? It's in communities na nasisira yung kabuhayan, tsaka yung health ng mga tao, right? And it's really, dump sites are around poor communities, the people who are least able to have any sort of healthcare, right, are the ones being affected by these toxic mountains of toxic plastic waste, right? And then if you look at yung false solutions na sinabi ni Aileen kanina na sinusunog ito sa mga cement kilns or sa mga plano gawin na mga burning facilities for plastics. These are usually built around communities na hindi rin sila nakaka-cope sa health impacts ng mga effects. It's the same case with coal plants, for example, not just in the Philippines, but also in other countries. They're built around communities that are marginalized, right? They're not in cities, not near where rich people live who have access to healthcare. They're in areas where people live from hand to mouth, usually, diba? Tapos parang sa atin, usually in fishing villages kasi kailangan ng tubig mula sa dagat to cool the plant, etc. So if you look at the environment, I think kailangan talaga na ma-frame ang environmental issues from a justice lens. Kasi dito natin nakikita na hindi standalone ang environment issues. Hindi siya like, di ba, we're celebrating Earth Day, akala ng mga tao, it's just about the planet. It's not just about the planet, it's about us. It's about the health of people, it's about our food security, it's about energy, right? It's about our access to clean water. And that's what climate justice is also. Na a lot of what's happening, ang nakinabang sa past by spewing out all these greenhouse gas emissions ay ngayon very rich industrialized countries, and they did it at the expense of poor countries. So parang at a macro lens, may kita mo rin yung disparity, right? Na kung yung at the small scale, 'di ba, communities suffering, tapos other companies profiting from their suffering. At the larger scale, yung climate justice, it's the same case. Rich countries have become rich kasi they were able to industrialize faster, and they industrialized using fossil fuels. And all these historical emissions are making poorer countries suffer. Kasi yung mga poorer countries na to, wala rin silang, mas mahirap sa atin mag-cope with the effects of climate change. It's not like sa mga ibang bansa, di ba, sa Netherlands, they build dikes, they build all these pumps. Ano sila? They're quite secure, I would guess. In the Philippines, we have no way of escaping a future of floods and a future of receding shorelines and so on. So if you look at environmental issues and climate from a justice perspective, you'd see that it's really a situation where those who are already powerless and those who are already who do not have the capacity to cope with these problems are the ones that are being pummeled to the ground by all these problems, right? So kailangan talaga na yun yung lente na kunin natin when we talk about environmental issues, especially climate. So what is climate justice? It's acknowledging that the burden of climate impacts, yung loss of lives, mga namamatay na mga tao, yun yung reality, di ba? Loss of lives, loss of homes, livelihoods are borne by those who are least responsible and most unable to cope with these problems. Tapos yung pangalawa, it's really calling on, standing up for climate justice is calling on these big polluters, so fossil fuel companies as well as industrialized nations, to be accountable for their responsibility, for their role in creating this massive problem that poorer countries have to deal with. And it's calling on them to fulfill their obligations to those who are impacted. So kailangan pinipilit natin sila na magbayad para sa problema na nagawa nila. So hindi natin pwedeng i-approach ang climate issue without a justice lens. Kasi ang problema na to ay societal. It's impacting the problems that poorer nations are already dealing with, like poverty, right? Lack food security, yung homelessness, right? So kailangan talaga na mas malalim at mas tinitingnan natin kung gaano kakonektado ang environment sa ating sa survival ng society.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lea. Ika nga sabi nga nila, hindi siya malayo sa bituka natin. Nakakabit siya sa bituka natin. Yung issue po ng climate crisis natin directly affects us all. And thank you po, Ms. Lea, for that. On your side naman, Val, what can you say about media's coverage naman on the climate crisis and the various environmental issues? And how can we improve kaya yung storytelling and communications advocacy for those of us who have the platform to tell stories and amplify voices?
On the assessment of media coverage of environmental stories, I'm a Libra. So I'm both glass half full and glass half empty. On one side, I'm seeing progress in terms of may mga environment section na sa ibang mga pahayagan. For example, The Guardian has their environmental newsletter that's called Down to Earth. And then New York Times has its own environmental newsletter. Alam mo, many newsrooms and organizations are really adding to the priority of their editorial agenda environment. And that's a challenge I would like to give to local papers, national broadsheets here in the Philippines. I know Rappler has an environment sector. We've partnered with Rappler many times on publishing stories written by our young trainees. No, I know Philstar has a dedicated section for environment and climate change. Philippine Daily Inquirer is not shy on publishing on the front page wildlife stories or stories on environment and climate change. So there has been so much positive movement in national
Mm-mm.
newsrooms and international newsrooms as well, compared to how it was in 2017. And then I go back to again thanking this huge movement that was led by, he was only a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. Sabi ko, dapat winner na siya eh, si Greta Thunberg. Kasi really paved the way for a lot of movements in climate
Mm-mm.
action. No? Although she's not, baka akala nyo na, Diyos ko si Greta. Hindi naman. Parang, I would just like to parang acknowledge no na madami ding people working behind the scenes na hindi siguro natin nakakita
Mm-mm.
with helping out on the environmental movement. So ayun, there has been improvements. I've seen it as someone from the media, as a journalism educator. I've seen it, but then now the effort is trying to get more young writers and giving them more access and opportunity to be published on environmental stories. Wala pong newspaper or media organization that focuses locally that focuses solely on environmental stories, and that is what Ayed wants to become, the number
Yeah.
one source of environmental stories, where the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Philstar, Rappler can get their information from. And that's why we also want to engage with NGOs like Greenpeace. Para kaming wired agency. You have environmental stories. It's hard work. I've been still at this for 3 years now. It's a lot of crawling in the dark, but I'm learning, and that's really the vision na we want to bridge, since there is no solely environmental news outlet in the Philippines. Why not become one? And
Right.
it's a work in progress, and we hope we could get the support of Miss Eileen and Miss Leah. But on improving storytelling, very briefly, if you're a storytelling advocate who's here, or a writer, or a photographer, or a video, there's three things. Usually in the format of a story, it's what and so what, right? What is the issue and what are the implications of the issue? And siguro as an addendum, and we always advocate and teach this at the edge, we include a third component. So we have what, so what, and then what now. What now really aims to identify the course of action that your consuming public can take. It,
Mm-mm.
talaga, our audiences and our viewers, they have stopped becoming just passive audiences. And I feel like they are now becoming more proactive, in a sense that, okay, I know what the issue is. I know what the implications are. What can I do about it? So in our storytelling, I hope that's how we improve on our reporting, identifying the course of action or the new solution, the what now component. Ayun lang naman.
Thanks so much, Val. Right, so now I mentioned kanina no, na it's 2022 national and local election is just around the corner. So I'd like to talk about naman po your specific agenda, environmental agenda from each of your organizations. Ms. Aileen, ano po yung highlights of the EcoWaste Coalition's call for the pro-Filipino climate and environmental agenda?
And so, actually, yung pro-Filipino and pro-Filipino climate and environmental agenda, it is um, call not just from EcoWaste, but there are
Mm-mm.
150 organizations supporting that, and that calls on the next leaders to take a stand and create opportunities to initiate a paradigm shift towards a model of sustainable development na nakikinig, yan, that listens and responds to the people, no? And that includes protecting the Philippines' interests related to its natural resources, and as stated sa ating constitution, so talaga inherit naman no, we have the right to a clean and healthy environment, no? And
Yes.
this call for our national leaders, or and all those candidates for the national and local election, to put forward as priority, as urgent, yung mga agendas that would respond to the
Mm-mm.
climate crisis, no? Sabi
Mm-mm.
nga, we need a vision of transformative actions so that we will be able to reduce yung climate related hazards. And ang importance niyan is really the policy, no? We want our next leaders to um, uphold good policies. Ang dami ni Pilipinas na environmental laws, no? That we should
Mm-mm.
all be thankful and be proud of. We have the RA 9003, we have the Clean Air Act. We're second or the third country that has an incineration ban na we should uphold it and strictly implement, 'di ba?
Opo.
Ayan. So that is what we're calling a pro-Filipino, sabihin maka-Pilipino, yung pagsisilbihan yung mga Pilipino sa kanyang mga agenda at mga plataporma. So that is what the pro-Filipino climate and environmental um agenda that we're pushing forward.
Alright. Thank you po, Miss Aileen. And hopefully, no, kung sino man manalo, mapakinggan yung mga, yung itong agenda po na sinusulong ng EcoWaste Coalition. Miss Lea, siya naman po, for Greenpeace, I know recently you invited young people po to write letters to presidential candidates. And I know that you've already delivered those letters to their offices. Ano po yung mga, some of the youth priorities and messages for the candidates?
Mm-hmm. For that project, it's called Love 52, and it's really building on yung hope na ano yung hopes ng mga kabataan ngayon in what they see in a president that would enable yung future na maganda para sa kanila. And well, because our main campaign in the Philippines is really about climate and climate justice, we did get a lot of letters from youth who wrote about asking the presidential candidates to address the climate issue. And aside from the elections work na ginagawa namin for youth, to be part of really standing up and raising their voice on climate justice and climate action. We're also working on looking at yung mga positions ng mga kandidato natin on climate and really trying to influence them to make this into their priority agenda once they get into power. Kasi we believe that the next presidency will be a climate presidency. We only have, di ba sabi nga ng IPCC ng mga scientists na we only have until 2030 to do climate action that will stop the worst impacts from happening. And itong next na administration will be in power in the 6 years before 2030. So the next president, we believe, needs to hit the ground running on climate when they come into power. And it needs to be sa ang perspective namin, and that's why we have this youth campaign to really make the youth voice prominent during these elections. Yung our belief is that this can only happen, yung good success on climate action and climate justice can only happen within a vibrant democracy. So we're also advocating, promoting na sana yung next administration will be an administration that will espouse, protect a vibrant democracy in the country, that will protect democratic institutions, so that people have a place on the table. People will be able to dialogue with government, with leaders, what they would like to see, what kind of action they want to see from those in power. So we feel na we can't have a healthy environment without a healthy democratic atmosphere in our country, and that is really what our campaign is about.
Thanks, Miss Leia. Vibrant democracy. Kanina kay Miss Aileen, transformative, no? Yung kailangan natin, yung mahinihingi natin for the next, mananalo po, magiging Pangulo at Vice Presidente din po, no, na mananalo sa ating election. How about Val? I know you've worked with a lot of young people and there's a call nga with your shirt, no, yung hashtag Let the Earth Be Heard. What specific actions can young people do in this upcoming elections, no, leading to May 9 and even beyond May 9 to make sure that the earth is heard when it comes to policies and governance in our country?
My God. Before anything else, I mean, I think Miss Leia captured it. A vibrant democracy. Kasi sa unang mga in the first half of this conversation, maybe I was coming off as a bit too aggressive on governments and institutions, but and agencies. But at the end of the day, governments are supposed to be our strongest allies. The duty bearers are the private sector and the CSO's strongest allies in positive environmental impact. And that's why we need to be able to elect a leader that does not only include environmental in their agenda, but really prioritizes climate action in their environmental agenda. I shared the link to the group chat, to the chat, and then maybe it can be shared. My friend John Leo Algo actually wrote an article on who are the greenest candidates for 2022. And if you're asking me what young people can do, especially the voters, go ahead and read it. Look at, peruse, and see where each candidate stands on their environmental in terms of their environmental positions and agenda and campaigns. On mining, for example, you can see there it's actually published on Rappler as well. Grabe, paborito talaga yung Rappler, no? It's that's the link right there, and you can see there's if you scroll down, Living Laudato Si prepared a checklist, a very quick checklist of where candidates stand in terms of different environmental issues such as mining, climate action, the West Philippine Sea. There you go. There you have it. And of course, I don't think this is the most updated, but it's due diligence for consumers to not take everything just at face value. Read through these, check where the check marks coming from, have the excess been updated, have the unidentified been updated. I think that's also due diligence on our end as consumers of media to see where the presidentiables now stand on green issues. And that is definitely a big consideration on my end when I choose my next president. Apart from someone who can offer that vibrant democracy that Ma'am Lea was talking about, that transformative leadership that Ma'am Aileen is talking about, we really need to see where also these presidential stand on very many issues affecting the climate vulnerable country that is the Philippines. Sabi nga ni Ms. Leia, the climate, it's a climate presidency. And Diyos ko, sana may tumakbo na presidente na yun lang talaga yung advocacy niya. Pero of course, imposible yan. So since it's impossible to get an extremely green president, let's see which president has green in their priorities.
All right. Thank you, Val. So you can check it out po, no, na it's on Rappler. It's the who are the greenest candidates for the 2022 elections. And you can see on track records of all our presidentiables in terms of their actions to this climate crisis. All right. So before we end our discussion for this evening, any last words or call to action or any campaigns po to promote? Let's start with Miss Aileen.
Yes, actually, for my last call, this pertains to the coming election. So I'm just calling for all voters to vote responsibly. Really choose your candidate, no? Someone who would protect the environment, someone who will listen to the people and put the people on its first list. Someone who would really take actions and prioritize the crisis put solutions to the climate crisis that we had.
Mm-mm.
So your vote is really important for our next leader to be the one that we want to be, um, to take action,
Yeah.
because we only have 8 years.
Mm-mm.
So that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Eileen. How about Val? Any last words, call to action, and anything to promote?
Yeah, right now, one of the major thrusts of IEDGE is on forest conservation. We acknowledge how important forests are, especially ridge to reef, no, in trying to capture carbon and making sure they don't go up in the air, all the sciences. So that's why we're working closely with Forest Foundation Philippines to produce the Kwentong Kalikasan video
Yeah.
initiative, where we put a human dimension to the issues on forest conservation. And I think Ma'am Lea mentioned it. Are we doing this conversation on environment? Are we doing this for just the trees and the plants and the turtles and the Nara and the, all the flora and fauna? Are we doing it just, are we advocating for the environment for these green stuff? The answer is not just nature. We're doing it for humans and Filipinos striving on the only planet that we have. There's no planet B, sabi nga nila.
Yeah.
So why are we doing this? We're doing this for climate justice because many Filipinos depend on the forests for their livelihood. Many Filipinos depend on the coasts for their livelihood. Our country is an archipelago and we take pride in our natural resources, being one of the most mega biodiverse countries in the world. But at the same time, we see it as a source of life, yung natural resources natin sa Pilipinas. And we need to remember that. There's a
Right.
siguro final lang there's a card there's a card that I read and ang tanong sa card, it's a card for conversation. At ang tanong sa card, and I'm not gonna answer this. I'm gonna let all the viewers answer this. Should we protect nature for nature's sake or for humanity's sake? So think about that.
All right. Thank you so much, Val. How about Miss Leia? Any last words to our viewers? Call to action or any campaign to promote?
Yeah, I just like to direct yung mga viewers to a Greenpeace campaign that we have right now, what you mentioned earlier, which was our Love 52 campaign. Love 52 yung title niya kasi there are 52 million youth that are voting for the coming elections. So I put two links dito, act.gp/love letter. Madali naman siyang tandaan. I want to enjoin people to write a love letter to the candidates. It's not too late to ask them to be a climate president. Tapos meron din kaming page where we collate yung stand ng mga presidents on presidentiables on the different issues around climate and climate justice. It's act.gp/know your president. So I'd like to also invite them to visit that page. Yeah. And i-repeat ko lang yung sinabi ni Aileen. The elections, it's really our time to decide ano yung gusto natin, not from the president, but for our future, right? So this is not a personality contest. This is who we think is best placed to work for our interests. And one of those, the main interest that needs to be what we are looking at is climate, right? Because we've said it all over and over during the past hour na it is the biggest challenge that the Philippines is facing. So yeah, siguro iwan ko lang yung na sana pag bumoto tayo, isipin rin natin na sino kaya sa mga presidente ang tutugon sa tawag ng panahon on climate. And who will enjoin people's participation of civil society into that big conversation on how we could move forward and ensure our survival in the face of the climate crisis. That's all. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lea. And thank you so much to our guests for sharing your advocacy and your insights with us this Friday evening. And we appreciate po your time for being here and discussing this issues during the Earth Day. Again, thank you so much kay Ms. Aileen Lucero, Ms. Lea Guerrero, and Val Vestil. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Right. So there we have it. We had a discussion regarding the climate crisis that we are experiencing today in the country, not just in the country, but in the world on Earth Day, no? And we mentioned and there are a lot of discussions on what does a genuine partnership look like in creating changes and creating and developing programs that would take care of the environment. So we need concrete and genuine partnership. That is not just lip service, but would create genuine action solutions that would also enjoin and include inclusivity nga, no, to talk with people who are directly affected by this climate crisis. And we also mentioned that this shouldn't be just a one-day event. Earth Day should be every day. It should be a lifestyle. And there are a lot of issues that is involved in climate crisis. It's an intersectional issue. Hindi siya malayo sa bituhan ng tao. It involves kung saan ka kukuha ng pagkain mo, how will you live for the next years to come, because environment is how you take care of the environment affects how you live. So it's very crucial, and what our guest mentioned, it's very crucial nga yung election natin for this May 9. Malalaman natin kung sino nga ba talaga kailangan nating iboto. Yung tao, yung president, at mga kandidato who will take care of our environment, who would not just perform lip service, but will really create solutions and programs that would take care of the environment, and programs would join and include the people who are in the grassroots, because like what Val mentioned, there is no planet B. We need to act now. All right. So thank you so much once again to our guests, Ms. Aileen Lucero, Ms. Lea Guerrero, and Val Vestil. So now let's get to know some allies in environmental activism in the Philippines. That's here on The Spotlight. On our spotlight this week are two movements that are doing important work in these crucial times. Today, we introduce hashtag Break Free from Plastic Movement, or BFFP. Hashtag Break Free from Plastic is a global movement envisioning a future free from plastic pollution. The movement is made up of more than 2,000 organizations and 11,000 individual supporters across the world, demanding reductions in single-use plastics and pushing for long-lasting solutions to the plastic pollution crisis, tackling plastic pollution across the whole plastic value chain, from extraction to disposal, focusing on prevention rather than cure, and providing effective solutions. In the Philippines, 5 of the BFFP member organizations, including Greenpeace Philippines and EcoWaste Coalition, work together on the Plastic Free Pilipinas project, promoting zero waste and other genuine solutions to plastic pollution. This involves promoting single-use plastic bans and stopping greenwashing and waste burning, like waste-to-energy facility projects, among others. Organizations and individuals may join Break Free from Plastic by filling out the form on their website. It's at www.breakfreefromplastic.org. And you may follow them on their social media accounts on Facebook and Instagram. It's at Break Free from Plastic, as well as Twitter and LinkedIn. Again, that's at Break Free from Plastic. And because we are nearing the elections in the Philippines, you may also check out Facts First PH. Facts First PH is an initiative media outlet, Rappler. Over 150 organizations, media coalitions, civil society groups, business organizations, and research and legal groups have joined together for a fight against disinformation on social media. The initiative aims to debunk dubious claims online, make facts spread faster than hate and lies, flag disinformation, and hold online perpetrators accountable. Through the website factsfirst.ph, Individuals and organizations can share facts, report dubious claims, and sign up to join the movement. We'll talk more about the upcoming elections and promoting democracy and civic engagement on our next episode in May. Now, let's see what else we can do for hashtag real impact. Let's find out what's next. Here are some opportunities and actions you may do for hashtag real impact. Learn about what young people want national election candidates to prioritize for sustainable development. Check out and sign on the SDG Youth Agenda for the 2022 national elections. Visit youthforce.ph/SDG Youth Agenda. Again, that's youthforce.ph/SDG Youth Agenda. Negative news and threats about the environment and the world can be overwhelming, but there are solutions and we can still take action. Check out this webinar entitled The Power of Service, Moving from Anxiety to Action for the Planet, presented by the Plastic Pollution Coalition. That's on April 27, 5 a.m. Manila time and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Register for free at bit.ly/powerofservice webinar. Sign on a petition for an inclusive, equitable, and robust global treaty on plastics. The United Nations recently approved a landmark agreement to have a legally binding global plastics treaty to end plastic pollution by 2024. Sign on through the link on your screen. That's bit.ly/sign-global-plastics-treaty. Again, that's bit.ly/sign-global-plastics-treaty. Have something to say to the Philippine presidential candidates? Write a love letter through Greenpeace Philippines Love 52 campaign. The first batch of youth love letters to the presidentials have already been delivered. Write yours today in the interest of the country and our environment. Send a letter through the link that's act.gp/loveletter. EcoWaste Coalition invites cyclists to join a bike ride titled Yak para sa Kalikasan at Malinis na Halalan. That is happening on April 24, Saturday from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. The route will start from Cartilla, Manila City Hall to Bantayog ng mga Bayani. Participants may also win shirts, mountain bikes, and accessories. For more details, contact Mark Louis Aquino at 0948-204-6129. And you may also see this post on EcoWaste Coalition's Facebook page. Lastly, the Association of Young Environmental Journalists and Forest Foundation Philippines invite you to catch a mini documentary and TV magazine episodes featuring forest conservation. That's on the official Facebook of AYEJ, or that's AYEJ, and Forest Foundation Philippines. For more interested advocates from Bukidnon and Misamis Oriental who want to get featured in the TV magazine episode this year, follow AYEJ Facebook page for the casting call. Let's watch this short trailer for the Kwentong Kalikasan Video Advocacy Initiative.
So I guess excited na gid kay ka.
Ani lang. Konton.
Hindi ko direct.
Oh my god, very cool. What's insane sa tong drawing?
It's not the same.
Oh. It's not the same. So wala gid siya yung mga counting gid ng mga basic na depende ra gid siya sa imo.
Okay. Kuha ka, cultural practitioner.
Cultural practitioner.
Dear future self, you survived Sandong, so now you can survive everything else.
Ay, wala. Balibuhon.
Para sa mga dakong kumpanya ra ang paglunsad og sustainability practices. Okay.
Okay, class, we're good. That was a good take. Let's give a round of applause to Liana. Good job.
All right, that's it for tonight's episode. If you found our chat helpful, then share our live stream so more people can watch our chat. Use our hashtags, hashtag chat up and hashtag real talk, real impact. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Quarantalk Media, and follow us on Facebook for more updates and exciting programs. It's at Quarantalk Media. And we're also on Twitter. It's at Quarantalk Media. I am Jermaine Halandoni de Ruña, and you may connect with me online via Facebook. That's Jermaine Halandoni de Ruña. On Twitter, that's Jermaine Halandoni de Ruña, and on Instagram as well. Join us again next month for another Real Talk here on hashtag Chat Up, Real Talk, Real Impact. Have a great weekend, everyone, and happy Earth Day.